Welcome to episode 1 of FASD What's the Craic, hosted by the A&amp network. I'm Scott, and today I am joined by my colleagues, Maggie and Rob.
Well,
how's it going?
hello.
Hi.
Oh, dear me. So this is a first in... this is our series 1, our first episode, and what we've decided to do is as FASD Ireland, we're going to have a podcast. We're going to just talk about FASD, how it affects people. We're going to have some guests on, but we've thought for this very first podcast, what we would do is we'd introduce ourselves and get to know each other a bit better on a banter kind of level, because obviously we want this podcast to be engaging and dare I say fun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't want to be.
It's not going to be boring.
That is definitely not going to be boring, because it's 3 of us. So I think let's start off by saying that we all have quite good fun in the office, don't we? We all have a laugh. We all like a bit of crack when we're out and about and stuff, and we go to events and stuff. So I think that we've got a list of questions here to get to know each other. But first of all, let me go to Rob, and we'll come to you last, Maggie, because most people know you and I, but nobody really knows Rob.
Yeah.
In fact, he's like an enigma, isn't he?
Yeah. Mystery Rob.
I have no presence.
Well, you definitely don't have any social media presence. We know
No,
that.
I don't. Yeah.
No.
No.
So,
Gave it up about a year and a half ago now.
Madness.
could you imagine not having social media?
No.
Yeah.
Oh.
Year and a half. All I have is Snapchat and WhatsApp. They're only really the ones you use for talking to people.
Yeah. So you're not a doom scroller then?
No, found it way too, like, you just sap your energy. Like,
Yeah.
you're there sitting on the toilet, next thing you're there 20 minutes because you've just gone scrolling into something.
I mean, he's not wrong.
You know what I mean? Like,
I feel seen. I feel seen.
Yeah.
you know, like, I got sick of it.
But for someone your age, because not being funny, you're not old. You're
22.
Yeah. So
22.
for someone at 22, that's quite an unusual thing,
Yeah.
not to be into that kind of.
Yeah.
Do people say that
yeah.
to you? Or?
Yeah, they would, yeah. Just so I work in the pub as well, as you both know, but everyone else obviously doesn't. I work in a pub as well, and there was this band playing last night, and I asked the band at the end, because they were really good. They were playing for this wedding. The wedding was only small, 30 people at it, but they were really, really good, and they do weddings and stuff. And I just wanted to know, did they do birthdays or anything? Just if there was any coming up, and I asked them for their card, and they kind of looked at me like they were like, "What?" yeah, our name's Blue Romantics or whatever it is, and we have Instagram and Facebook and stuff. You can find us there. And I was like, "Oh yeah, sound okay." I actually don't have either or nothing, and they were just like, "Oh, okay." So I just got a piece of paper and just wrote it down or whatever.
Wow. That's because I've just gone to Facebook and liked them.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, so that's Rob.
Okay.
And Rob is at FASD Ireland. You're our hub development assistant, and you're here on what is it you're on?
Work placement.
Work placement for
6
your
months, maybe.
university.
Yeah, it's compulsory part of the degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to do work placement somewhere. Actual course you'd think I'd be doing something to social care or psychology or something, but kind of got landed
Something related to
Yeah.
FASD maybe.
Yeah, we kind of got landed a bit randomly. I thought at the start, but then when you came into doing the whole, I do geography and linguistics. So linguistics, I can draw a few bits off, like taking causing, the whole design and the pathway and that for questions, and that was kind of similar to some bits of what I'd be doing in college with signs and how people talk and stuff. And then geography, obviously, bringing all the information from around the country and together.
Okay. I was going to say, places that we've probably never heard of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although that's not geography, is it?
No, I love it better than looking at a map.
Oh my god! Yeah, your ordnance surveys. I bet you're going to stack of them at home, haven't you?
I have one here in the desk.
Oh, he's got one on his desk.
Touring Map Ireland, Collins edition. I was looking at it. It's missing a lot of back roads around home, so I I wouldn't rely on this to get you everywhere, but
Oh, dear me. Hilarious. And Maggie,
Yes, sir.
the first podcast host, someone with FASD. Is that right? Is that what you're telling me?
I think so. I know there's been a few in the past where individuals have done their own podcast, but never as actually a core group of hosts. So this will be a first.
It will.
It's weird being on this side of the microphone.
because you've done a lot of interviews and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, you've been on the A&F podcast as well, haven't you?
Oh,
But-
I have.
But you, well, Al thought he was going to have you back, but well, you might do it at some point because your story was so full, and I don't want to say long because that's the wrong thing to say.
It was
but
really long.
There was a lot of stuff in there
Yeah.
when you've only got an hour, and it's impossible to cover it in an hour,
Yeah.
isn't it? So, but we've got you here now, so that's tough, isn't it? So you're
Yeah.
a podcast host now as well,
I know.
and obviously you work for FASD Ireland, and you do a variety of things. I guess it's safe to say you kind of dip in and dip out, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
co-host some of the training, the workshops that we do.
Yeah. I think that's a good way of putting it, that I dip my feet in and out of things and I get to do a lot of, I guess, expanding of what I'm interested in with advocating or mentoring or just talking and just raising awareness. But it also means I have huge opportunities to work with other organizations across the globe and like be able to figure out what they're doing, then try and bring it back here and be like, hey, this is working for this organization. Might be something worth exploring. And I think that,
Yeah, it works well. I think it works well.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And 2 weeks ago, we did our first online workshop, didn't we?
Yeah.
Just two of us.
Mm.
We haven't actually
I
seen you
didn't
since we
know.
did it.
I didn't. Yeah, not both of you together. I haven't seen you
Yeah.
and asked how it kind of went or anything.
you missed out on that one.
I thought it was good.
Yeah,
I didn't feel so great at the end of it. It was one of those imposter syndrome moments where
Yeah,
you like at the
something
end.
new, like. Mm.
Did you feel the same?
Yeah, I think we didn't think it was 3 hours and we didn't think we were going to fill up that 3 hours. Boy, did we fill
Was
it
it-
up.
Yeah,
It was, we went over the 3 hours. This one we're just like, no.
Well, because we started off when we first opened up, we said, look, we've set 3 hours. If we get to 2 and we've run out of things to say and you've no questions, because we're used to the workshops that we squeeze into the day for people like SNAs and stuff like that. And generally, I think what we found is with some of the workshops that we do that people are really wary of having their cameras on and engaging because sometimes it's parents who are inquisitive about FASD and they're just at the kind of beginning stages of working that out.
Yeah.
So they're really not keen on kind of asking questions or making themselves known.
Yeah.
And the SNA training, so for anybody who's listening outside of Ireland, the SNA is special needs assistant, isn't it, in school?
yeah.
So the SNA training is normally at the end of a working day. If you imagine you've been dealing with a child who you think is FASD all the time, the last thing you want to do is engage with somebody.
Yeah.
So, but that's what we're used to. So I think when we said we'd do 3 hours, it was like, oh, can we actually fill 3 hours? But it was people with FASD, it was parents of people with FASD, there was a psychologist there, a psychotherapist there.
Manager.
Yeah.
But I think what made it different is on so many webinars, it's you put your question into the chat and then it's just moderating stuff. Whereas this, we really want it to be as relaxed and we just want people to feel comfortable. And I mean, we had so much engagement, just not from just individuals, but also from, because it's open to everyone around the globe. We were having people from Alaska be like, this is,
It's quite
and-
weird.
There was an Alaskan person. on it,
yeah.
Oh, really?
who has FASD, and there's people in Canada and there's people from Scotland. And so it was really cool to be able to hear about the different experiences of
Absolutely.
lived experience about, oh, this works for me. And actually, I think what was really funny, we were talking about things and you could just see people nodding their heads being like, yeah, oh, I know what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And feeling validated. And I think that a lot of people came out of that who had lived experience or living with FASD and they felt validated that actually I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And I think that was...
And you can live in somewhere completely different in the globe, and it's the same actually. And the one thing that I would say about that was we picked up on a few things that we never really thought about before. And we're probably going to discuss them as we go through this podcast, not this podcast, but other episodes of the podcast. So things like medication, things like parenting styles and stuff like that. So it's interesting to actually have discussed that with other people and to bring their takeaways as well, because a lot of people hadn't thought about stuff like that to do as well. So yeah, it's all good. So whilst people on the A&F network may know me, there might be new people listening. So you want to ask me? I mean, like, what do I do? I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you do, Scott?
Yeah. What?
I cook jacket potatoes.
They did look very good.
They look really fluffy.
Good. Yeah. So today for lunch, we this is going to be the most boring podcast. Today for lunch, Rob had a wrap with vegetables and chicken in it.
No, it's pretty good now. Pulled pork.
Pork there. But you just get a bit bored of some of the lunches that they serve in the supermarket. So today, Tris and I had a baked potato with coleslaw and cheese. It's really nice. Anyway, so what do I do? So yeah, I guess I just kind of do the operations side at FASD Ireland. So, keeping Tris in check.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah.
For the most part, yes, you're right. And that's unusual for me, actually, because I'm normally, like, in previous jobs, I've been kind of
out there representing
But I think that it's not a role that I feel comfortable with within FASD land, because a statistist, I can't even say the word, statistics and things like that, I'm useless with numbers and figures and all that sort of stuff. So for me to be kind of a face of, I think that'd be really difficult for me to do. I wouldn't do it justice. I would probably say the wrong thing, or so I think when it comes to my own personal experience, I'm really confident to do that. So living with FASD was a real opportunity for us just to sit and kind of, for me to talk about it from a parenting perspective. Yes, I do have permission from my son to talk about some of the issues that we have, and not talking out of school. If there's anything I didn't want to talk about, I wouldn't talk about it, but actually he's happy. In fact, he is going to be our first guest, isn't he? So in the next episode, he's going to be you guys' first guest, because I'm stepping out of that one. And I had that conversation with him, and I said, I'm not going to be in it. And he said, why not? And I said, because I want you to feel free to say what you need to say. He says, I'll say what I like anyway. But you will, so another lived experience of living with FASD land. So so that's what I do, and I keep Tris's diary in check because he's hopeless at it, and run the office. And I don't know. I just do a load of things. Oh, wouldn't you know the phone would ring when we were recording a podcast? It just sounds about right, doesn't it? There you go. We'll ring you back. So we've got we have some questions. We're not going to ask them all, but it's just some questions for listeners to get an insight into who we are, why we're involved in what we do and stuff. So who wants to ask a question first?
Go on, I'll actually hit you, Scott. Because I feel not hit you, but but I just feel like just going back to your kind of a dynamic there for this peer support groups, because I've been doing a bit kind of on it about just talking about it and explaining what they are and stuff. With different bits I've been at the moment, and kind of just thinking, like, obviously you're a great example for people that are living with FASD and being able to talk to them. You have so much information that you have learned, like Maggie, about yourself, and that you've really good understanding. And I just feel that somebody with FASD having that understanding about themselves will really help them to kind of, be able to kind of go on in life, and like what you're doing now, like getting your own job and that like sort of thing. You know when to tell us like something that you can't do.
And boy, do I make you listen.
But you do, and you know that's important, because there's no point to not. And then Scott's kind of side of it, then obviously being a parent, but like you've real good understanding. Obviously, you've yourself and Al have that adoption fostering podcast as well. Like, but you're kind of very much in touch with kind of. Like how it would be, I'd be more so kind of like I'd be like, so these people tell me all these kind of issues, and I'd be like, how do I help them? Like,
Yeah.
where do they need to go or whatever? But I feel like the dynamic for the peer support is more supporting, and it's just about understanding and listening. And both of your experiences are really well set up for something like that.
Yeah.
So, like, just to go on to my first question for you, then Scott, was like, what do you do for yourself after a particularly hard FASD parenting day?
Oh, do you know, they're rarer and rarer as Jacob gets older, which is a
Yeah.
good thing because
He has
actually,
that understanding too, though.
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
he's now maturing,
Yeah.
and he's getting less and less likely to kind of, to have the symptoms. So do you remember we went to the Jeff Noble thing in
Yeah.
Aaron, and he said about symptoms rather than behaviors? I prefer
Mm.
the word symptoms because a behavior makes it sound like it's
Deliberate or
It's negative,
deliberate.
kind of.
Yeah,
negative,
exactly.
yeah.
So, Jacob's symptoms now are probably he gets a bit grumpy when he's tired, or,
Yeah.
probably if he doesn't get his own way, he might kick off a little bit. But actually, we've adjusted our parenting style to suit him. And he is now old enough to understand actually some of the things he can unlearn, and he can ask us for help in terms of strategies and how to deal with certain things.
Yeah.
And I think that when I think back to when I first became a parent, and the peer support element was always seen as really important. So mixing with other people who'd been through the same process as us, so adoption specifically in this case. But I always found that everybody's experiences are completely different.
Yeah.
But the more I kind of got into peer support, I mean, the job I had at Adoption UK, it was a peer support agency from top to bottom. It was mostly made up of adoptive parents who worked together.
Yeah.
So you had it in work, you had it at home. But what I find is that whilst peer support element is so important, it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're a social worker, whether you're a psychotherapist, whether you're a teacher. If you're sitting in a room with other teachers, you're able to share stories of things that you've experienced. They might be slightly different to somebody else's experience, but they might have an option that you've not thought about, kind of thing.
Mm.
And I think that's where it becomes important, because it's not about walking over somebody else's personal experience. So if I was talking to another parent of someone with FASD, I wouldn't diss their experience just because I've not experienced that.
Yeah.
But I may be able to kind of, have a different angle on it that
Yeah,
they've not
give
thought
something
about.
that might help them of
Exactly,
your
yeah.
experience as well. Yeah.
The problem you've got with peer support is that sometimes it can get a bit grumbly, and when I say grumbly, I mean like
Go
like
into talking about whatever's
complaining about everything.
Yeah. They just focus on
that
bad.
the support aren't there.
I think you need an element of that,
of
but
course.
I think you have to try and keep it as positive as you can, because I think if you don't, then it just does become it can actually bring you down.
Yeah. Well, I could just imagine people will probably start, like coming to it with like a load of problems that they have, instead of like coming to it with like an open mind where they're like, they're more so going on there to kind of give a bit of a an idea of like what's happened to them in the past 2 weeks since the last one or something. They'll have their list of all these issues, instead of going in with kind of a positive mind and being like, listening to what's and then it might cop with someone else about like showing an idea or something, or Maggie, you might pop in with something like, actually, I don't think that really works for people with FSD, or
but it almost becomes like a competition where parents have to outdo each other for the worst possible situations or the worst possible day. And I think with that, there are some like online support groups that are specifically, for parents and stuff, where they would not let people with FASD in because it's so triggering. Because where I am on my journey, I've learned how to control triggers and know what does it. I'm allowed to be in them. But sometimes it's just like, even I have to walk away being like, no, it's almost like they're just looking for the negativity instead of focusing on one success, which happened today. And I think that is why it is so important for like there to be peer support, not just for parents, but also for individuals, because it's actually, it is so difficult to find peer support groups that's just for individuals. And I think what makes, like, we're planning to bring up the support group for individuals with FASD Ireland is that they're run by someone with FASD.
Mm.
It's not by a parent who thinks they know what it's like, or a a social worker or a professional who actually doesn't have to live it. They've read the book, so they think they know it, but actually having it run by someone who's been there. And also it's someone who's older who has been through the bad stuff, and so it's okay for people to be honest and be like, oh, I stole things, or I'm having impulse controls, or this happened, and for that individual be like, yeah, I've done that too. There's no judgment, there's no shame. Okay, try this strategy.
Well, at least through them groups, you're noticing these things, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and I think what Maggie said is absolutely spot on, because there's two, and certainly in the last job I was in, I hope they've developed on a little bit better than they have, but they were starting to look at offering peer support groups for adopted adults and adopted children and stuff, and hopefully now they are delivered completely by people who are adults who were adopted,
Who've
or
been
adults
through it,
who
yeah.
are adopted adults, or however they refer to themselves these days. Because actually, though their experience, if they're running something like that for an organization like that, then they will have to be fully trained. They'll have to be safeguarding trained. They'll have to be guard vetted. They'll have to be everything that you can think of. They'll have to be trained to the standard, not to a standard, but trained to understand and be able to recognize issues and concerns and stuff like that. They will be supervised by somebody who manages the kind of the groups, I guess.
Yeah.
So they would have to take that to their supervisor, say, okay, so this came up in the group, and without breaking a confidence or anything like that, because you wouldn't necessarily name names unless it was a safeguarding issue, but you would have to actually take that to the supervisor to be able to say, actually, I have a concern with this. What do you think? It might just be a very quick investigation. It might just be a very quick chat with, the person who's run the group, or going back to the child. But that's really important, because, we're not here to judge anybody's parenting styles or parenting attempts, but obviously, unless there's safeguarding issues, or risks.
But then for like techniques, then to like, keep things positive and stuff, because I've obviously, like, working on the hub, I've heard, like, lots of parents, and they're literally at their wits' end, like, and you must have had them days too, like, and is it purely just how do you kind of?
It's been a walk in the park. Yeah, no, it hasn't been a walk in the park.
Yeah,
I back in the day, absolutely. To the point now, I think that we were talking about triggers earlier, weren't we? Just within conversation. And I think I have various triggers of stuff that happens, and it can happen in the office as well. That's the thing. So, like, you'll be having a conversation with Tris, and because you're someone with FASD and I live with Tris, it could be a conversation about something very similar to what we've had at home, and I'm instantly triggered and thinking, okay, is this going to kick off? It's not, because it's a work conversation. But when I think back to some of the experiences that we've had as parents, and Jacob doesn't mind me saying this, and he's as embarrassed as we are, because we didn't know how to deal with it. When he was younger, and he used to beat the absolute crap out of us, or he would swear at us, or he'd set fire to his bin in his bedroom or whatever. Those days were probably the toughest, and you do think, when is this going to stop? How can I change it? What can I do? All that sort of stuff, because it's not that you're doubting your parenting ability, but you know that you have to change something for it to be better for that person. So to be better for your child, because actually they don't want to be like that. You don't want to be setting fire to your bin, because it's dangerous, but there's just something inside you that's going, okay, where's those matches? Let me stuff that full of paper. You don't want to see bruises. You don't want to see your parents having to try and keep you safe by holding you when your arms are flailing everywhere, and you can do a lot of damage to yourself. So yes, I have that experience, and a lot of parents don't like my response when they ask me, how did you change things? Because actually it goes against the natural parenting instinct to have consequences for your children when they do something wrong, to do what I don't know a doctor says, and again, this is something we're
Yeah.
going to cover in the future. Medicate your child. Who you medicate the child for?
Yeah.
Even if it's you or for them. So there's loads of things in there, and I think that is the thing with FASD. We have to parent to accommodate our child so that they feel safe, so that they can actually grow and mature,
Yeah.
and also so that we can help them to become those people as parents.
And I think it's also to ignore when other parents are like, oh, you're letting them off easy, or actually you're just, you know, you need to be tougher, because I think a lot of parents who are raising kids or adults with FASD, they get a lot of judgment because on the outside, you know, I go and take someone's stuff and take it home. That other parent is going to see it as, oh, she stole, she's been planning this, da da da. And actually, no, it's just impulse control. I saw it, I didn't think of it as ownership, I took it. And so.
But then, as like a parent, then at the time of that happening isn't the time to confront the child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's about nearly letting it happen, and like if a meltdown happens or something like that, you let it happen. Once it's all cooled down, then you go and explain, and that's how the child understands. Not at the time of like where that impulse control happens or where that meltdown is happening. That's not where a parent needs to kind of do it. And this is where like other parents are obviously like, why aren't you telling your child to shut up? Like you're in the middle of a shopping center, like.
Yeah.
But it's when you go home, and then when the child is back in their kind of a safe place, then you kind of you talk to your child, and that's how they grow and understand. They're not going to understand in that moment.
No.
So I feel like, especially with you guys and Jacob, like obviously kind of understood this, and it's very. I can just see him like I'd be thinking like, geez, if I was a parent now and letting Jacob off into town or whatever, and a young lad like going around whatever playing basketball, I'd be like word sick, like. But like you obviously know, and he's got that understanding like himself, and he understands what to do, and like he's very mature, like he seems it anyways, like.
But he knows that's because he knows his boundaries. He knows the boundaries that we've got with him.
Yeah.
But he also knows that if he goes over those boundaries, which he often does, that the way we deal with it now compared to the way we dealt with it maybe 8-9 years ago is very different.
In a control and calm kind of
exactly, because there is no point in me going, where have you been?
Yeah.
You know, why didn't you come home when you said it? Blah, 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 blah. There's no point in me doing that because it doesn't have any effect on him, and it actually riles me up to be like that. So why not just say,
both are escalating like
it's the case of now, it's like, Jacob, you're late. Yeah, I'm sorry. Blah, 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 right? Which we wouldn't get if I went, where have you been?
Yeah. Well, like the things like this sort of stuff, like 6 months ago when I started, whatever, 7 months ago now, is it? Really? No, 6, and like, what do you mean? Like, I wouldn't have had a notion about all these bits, like, so like dealing with that and the kind of with neurodiverse kind of individuals growing up, like, and kind of understanding this, like, that can help all parents too in a way, like.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sure.
And that is a fantastic segue.
Yeah.
Because Maggie wrote a question, but I'm going to ask it rather than
it's okay.
ask it, Maggie, because we kind of contributed small. So since you started working here, you just mentioned what you've learned with that. What has been your biggest moment? Like in the 7 months, what's been the?
I wouldn't say it was such like a moment in one, like kind of an instinct. It was probably when we went to Salford that time, like. That was just, and it wasn't even so much about, obviously the whole day and all was like very intense, and like there was a lot of kind of workshops going on, and like there was a lot of kind of lectures and a lot of information, like to be trying to get into my brain, like I'm writing down a piece of paper and whatever. But like it was more so actually spending a lot of time with you outside of the office, like even the likes of like going to the airport and traveling around, and kind of just like not so much that I was watching you or whatever, but like I kind of just was like. I kind of just, because obviously when we're like, so our office is set up that I kind of face out the window and I'm not actually really facing anybody.
So you don't like your face.
Yeah. Exactly. Fair enough. You prefer to see the back of my head. So you're both on the other side of the office, like, so don't really get that much in. Well, we would obviously, but it's more so talking. Like sometimes I'd be
Yeah.
talking, but I wouldn't even look around at you. I'd just
Yeah.
say something like. But when we actually went over, I found it in a way like good experience to just kind of not so much monitor you or watch you, but kind of I learned off you too by just how you're interacting. And that was kind of when I was kind of like noting some kind of behaviors or whatever. Again, that word behavior symptoms or whatever.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you even wanted it's with time when you're checking into the hotel. I went back.
Worry guts. You all were.
I did. I worried, but then I was trying to ring you and there was no answer after the first time. And I text you or whatever, and you said you were with your friends or whatever. So I was like, grand. But it wasn't really the plan we'd followed that day. You know, we'd said we'd go for lunch and then we'd go eat, and then I wanted to go for a tour of Old Trafford, being all weird.
Buddy.
So you said you'd be all right, and you'd go back and check in. So then when I went to go get checked in, you hadn't, and your bag was still in the thing. I was panicking. I was like, oh my God. Sure, I didn't really know. Could you have gotten lost, or could you have been in like the other side of Manchester or something, or were you just gone shopping, or like what was?
I did go shopping.
You did go shopping.
Kidnapped by some,
So I hadn't a clue, like, and your bag was still in the hotel, so I hadn't checked in. But like these sort of things, like,
Well, that's funny here from your, because I was just like, I'd message, I think I'd text you, being like, what time does check-in end? And you're like, 2 a.m. I was like, right, fine. For me, so my thought was like, okay, I have until 2 a.m. Don't need to worry. And in my defense, that was my original plan, where we're going to go for lunch. You wanted to go, I was going to go back to the hotel, check in, go for it, and then meet up with my friends. Except they came like while I was finishing lunch, being like, hi, we're here, and let's go shopping. And all of a sudden, let's go for a meal. And all of a sudden, it was like, but the whole time I was just like, oh, it's 2 a.m. Plenty of time. I did have to do like an online presentation at like 1 a.m. So I did cut it a bit close. But for me, I wouldn't have thought about it like that. I was just like, oh, it's 2 a.m. As long as I'm there before 2 a.m., everything's fine. I had no idea how much stress I was causing Rob until like he was like, where have you been, Maggie, when I finally arrived in reception.
Well, I wouldn't even have really been, I wasn't even really have been that bothered, but it was more so that I knew that for you, before we were going, you were very much kind of concerned about like the times we were getting, how we were getting to the airport, the times the airport was going, times, because you obviously didn't want to miss it, or the times the flight was leaving or whatever. So you were very kind of strict and like on these things. And then once we got there, it was kind of all gone out the window.
Well, I don't think it gone out the window. It's just it was my first time having someone else book my flights and doing that, because usually I do it myself, and now all of a sudden I didn't have those details. So I was literally on Google being like, what time, because I just didn't have what time my flight was, when it was. So that was, I was like anxiety ridden, being like, usually I have all the documents saying this is when your plane leaves, da-da-da. I didn't have any of that until you arrived at the airport being like, here you go, here's your boarding pass and stuff. So then once I was like, all right, that's fine then.
Yeah. And I think that's something that, and that was going to be my question for you actually, before we kind of close out. But this being your first out of the home job, because normally you do a lot of stuff online as work, and this is the first time you've worked in an office environment, should I say. And it's really interesting hearing that perspective, because you're so used to doing it yourself, and obviously this was all through work, so it was all paid for through work. And we probably gave you the flight time, but didn't think actually maybe she needs a bit of paper to say, oh yes, okay, so I can see, so that's my ticket, so that's fine, so I've got my ticket, so I know that's when we're leaving, so I know when I have to be at the airport and all that sort of stuff. So that's a really interesting element. But what has been the hardest thing to get your head around that you didn't really expect with an out of the house job? I know you've done stuff previously, like you've done college courses and you've had
been on an egg farm for 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of working in this environment, what's been the hardest thing to get your head around in terms of working like in an officey environment with lots going on?
I think for me, because I work part-time, it's I will come in and like so much stuff will have happened that I have no idea, and then I'm just trying to catch up and stuff, because I only work 2 days out of the 5, so all of a sudden nothing will have happened. I come in, all of a sudden we've gotten money from here, or we're doing this, or we're doing this presentation, or these people have come in, and I'm just like, what? And then it's just trying to then figure out, okay, how's this affecting me? Okay, is this outside of, or is it a different day, or what's going on? And then missing out, I suppose, on, the banter, or, something will have funny have happened when I'm not here. And so there'll be like an inside joke that I have no idea what's going on. I'm like, well, what have I missed? Clearly there's something here. So I think it's just, I'm so used to being not at the center of it, but being so involved, because it will be of being a work event where I'm either there 5 days a week, or I'm so involved in it. Whereas this time I'm only here 2 days a week, so obviously a lot happens on the days I'm not here, and then feeling not left out, but just trying to feel okay, understanding that we do so many different things that I'm not involved in everything. So sometimes things are happening that I have no idea and I'm not part of, and so it's just, I think, expectations and figuring out, okay, had these expectations, actually my expectations might have been misplaced, or I over expected, or I under expected. And it's just, I think, understanding that I can't be involved in everything, which is new to me, because
Yeah.
everything I do is, if it's podcasts, I'm the center guest, or if it's a support group, I'm the one who's running it.
Yeah.
So it's just figuring that out.
So that's probably more about, because obviously you wouldn't spend, well, I don't know, you might spend 6 hours online doing something, but on like just one specific thing.
Yeah.
rather than 6. So I guess that's really quite interesting if I think about the change of coming in here and doing a number of things that aren't specifically presenting or supporting
Yeah.
or training or whatever. So that must be different. I guess that must be. Can I just reassure you, though, it's not all great. Like,
No.
but there are days where nothing happens.
Often we just sit here in
Those are
silence
always
for
the
2
days when
hours.
I'm here that nothing
All
happens.
you hear is just click, 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 click.
Oh dear.
The typing of the keyboard for 2 hours straight.
Yes, and then listening to Rob eat like a horse with big teeth.
Yeah.
That kind of way. But anyway, it's all good. Crunchy crisps. Well, I think that's quite a good start to our to the first step. Well, to the series anyway. Maggie, what are you hoping to get out of this? Present this podcast. What are you hoping to be able to?
Oh, good question. Putting me on the spot on that one.
Yeah.
I think there's two parts. Part of me is I want to see what it's like being on this side, where you do the research on a guest, or you have to figure out what questions, rather than just, saying the same story, or, having the same questions asked when I'm a guest. And I think just seeing how far it can go. I mean, we're doing one series, but I want to see the interactions and, the comments, and hopefully the audience will then be like, having their own questions that they want to be asked, or being like, hey, can we have this guest on, or actually, and just, really expanding it. And also being someone with FASD as a co-host. So it means I get to kind of have that input, but also get to listen to other individuals and be like, oh, actually, I haven't tried that strategy. I'm going to go and try that. Or that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah. And Rob, for you, because you're obviously leaving us at some point over the next month or so, to go off and have a life, I guess.
Turns out there's a life outside of FASD.
But you have agreed to continue on as co-host.
He's still doing the
which
podcast,
is fantastic. But what do you,
well,
why did you say yes, and what do you want out of it?
It's obviously I've taken some interest in like FSD since starting here, like been reading a lot about it and whatever else online and that articles and whatever. But like it's a good way of obviously staying engaged with you guys, what you're doing. I suppose when you were talking about how you feel like when you've only here 2 days a week, maybe something happens on a Friday and a Monday, or something and you're in on a Tuesday. That's just what it's going to be like for me. So it's going to be like a good way to catch up with all that's been going on here in the office.
The gossip.
Yeah. It's just here for the gossip.
Get the goss. But as well, like what you're working towards, and I think it'd be a good way to kind of just stay engaged and have the chats with you and meet other people too, kind of in the world of FSD, and talk to them too.
Yeah, I think when you just said something there, so I think you're minimizing what you've done, because you just said when I read up about FSD, you are like an amazing researcher.
Yeah.
And so it's not just a case of, oh, look, he's gone all shy.
I know.
Oh,
It's
you
almost
can
a
see him,
good thing
yeah.
you're not on social media, because like
Yeah.
you'd be able to find all the dirt.
Exactly, yeah. But you are an amazing researcher, and the research you do actually a lot of the times it's like, wow, okay, where the hell did you find that? So it's not just about reading. Yeah, I think you kind of you undersell your abilities, I would
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
Thanks.
Shall I ask myself the question?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
What do you want out of this?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting because obviously the A&F podcast has been going for 6 years now, and I think that we've tried lots of different things, and I think just kind of opening up that platform for other topics. So it's not just FASD What's the Crack that's going to be on there. It's also BMBU conversations with a couple of therapists, Vicky and I can't remember the other lady's name, but anyway, they're two therapists. They've got their own kind of counselling therapy organization. They're having bite-sized conversations about things like language. So the ones that they've done today. So for me, I think it's just about bringing another element to the network, but also in terms of stuff in Ireland. Now, it's clear I'm not Irish. Maggie is Irish. She just doesn't sound Irish. Rob is the most Irish person I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do, and I get to stick for it every single day. Every day.
But I don't think there's enough Irish stuff around.
That's quite true, yeah.
So when I'm thinking about something like a podcast on FASD, there's, what have we got? Maybe half a dozen podcasts on FASD around the world that I'm aware of anyway. And they're all in different kind of
proper ones, yeah.
Yeah, they're all different kind of setups and layouts and hosts and co-hosts and guests and non-guests and all that sort of stuff. So I guess for me, what I want us to be able to do is to have a little bit of kind of fun.
Yeah.
Whilst tackling another serious subject.
Yeah.
Adoption's a serious subject. Fostering's a serious subject. Special guardianship is a serious subject.
Oh, yeah.
FASD is a serious subject as well, but I want to be able to kind of, for people to listen, get lots out of it, but actually go away feeling like they've been lifted up a bit.
That, and I think also the fact that what I'm hoping for this podcast is it's not just for parents or for anyone. It's actually individuals can easily listen to this as well and be able to relate. So it's almost a family podcast. It's a family involved podcast.
And is that not the point of having us three as the hosts together? Because you live with FASD, I parent someone, well, two people potentially with FASD.
And I'm just me.
Rob's just here.
He's going to have a sniff of the turf.
But I think having your perspective, because you're so new to FASD, means that you'll be asking questions or have different perspectives on what we would always just assume everyone knows, or just assume that, you know, because we've been through it, it's just like, oh, that's, whereas you'd be like, actually, what does FASD actually mean? Because we just assume everyone knows.
What is the FASD?
No, yeah. It does kind of, because there was times too, like, where I'd be kind of nearly feeling a little bit stupid or something, like asking me a question, you know, at the start, like, it could be about anything, like, I don't know, especially all the kind of the acronyms and stuff like that that are associated with like medical conditions.
Yeah.
There's lots, and like you'd obviously know them all off, like, you know, just from dealing with them, like for most for all your lives, kind of. And I'd be like, be feeling a bit kind of silly asking, what's this, like, even just from hearing you talk about it in the office or something, I'd be like, what actually is it? Do you know? So like, but obviously, sure, it does represent all kind of aspects of how, and it hopefully will make kind of a good platform for FASD in Ireland, like.
Absolutely.
Good to have the different perspectives too between the three of us.
Absolutely. And acronyms are the bane of everybody's life. I think, you know, when you work in a profession and you go in and you're new, like, it's just, like, there should be bans actually. But even when we're writing stuff like applications for funding and press releases and stuff, I'm always very conscious of it even then, because of exactly that. So I think it's common. Right, we're going to wrap this up. So that's episode 1. Obviously, when episode 1 comes out, we'll listen back to it, cringe.
Obviously.
and hopefully make some improvements for episode
Yeah.
2. We'll also be checking the sound quality out, because hopefully, once we send this to the
The techie guy.
techie
Techie
guys
The techie guy.
Um,
Hi.
at the A&F Network, aka our course. Hopefully he'll do a grand job on it. This today we've actually recorded in the same room, which is very unusual for the A&F Network, because normally we do it online. But hopefully it works fine. Episode 2 will be out in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, probably be a little bit less introductory. More
Absolutely.
so
Oh, yeah.
kinda,
Yeah.
This is all you're going to get of us. That's
Get
it.
into
You
it.
already know everything about us. That's it.
yeah,
And the content for that next time will be an interview with Jacob, which you
Yeah.
guys are going to do. I might not be on that podcast episode
We'll see.
at
We'll
all.
see.
We'll,
Yeah.
we'll see. Yeah, we'll see
You
what
might
happens.
feature something at some stage, or we know.
when I come back in and you're like, so Jacob reckons that you do this. What's
Yeah.
all about that?
You might need your insight to the bigger picture.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so hopefully that'll be great. And then hopefully we will do one every month. So there's 7 episodes, 7 months worth.
That's
And-
into
and-
next year.
Was this one, we've kind of done an introduction.
Yeah.
I'm sure the other ones will be a little bit more structured, and you guys will also contribute to some of the organising and stuff of them as well. So,
Oh, we will.
yeah. To be fair, I sprung on Rob this morning when he came in the door.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, right, they're doing the podcast today." He's like, "Oh, Jesus." And the only last thing I was going to say, which we were going to say at the beginning, we are marking all of these episodes explicit for the simple fact that
I have
Maggie
the mouth of a
might
sailor.
she's got-
And Scott,
Uh,
Scott has self-diagnosed threats,
And I swear like a sailor.
so
especially around Irish people.
yeah, it's reasonably well known in FASD circles
Yeah.
that people with FASD do have they're very relaxed with their
Expressive.
language. Yeah, expressive.
Expressive language
Yeah.
when they get excited or
So there may be some swear words used at some point. So we haven't really done too badly. I don't think. I think
No,
what
okay.
we said was crap on this one, maybe.
Mm.
crap isn't a swear word, is it?
No, I know.
So
But that's what I'm saying. That's the worst we've gone. So
Yeah.
I think we're fine for this one. So this one's probably not going to be marked explicit, but the next one's probably will
Yeah.
be just in case.
it's up.
So that's it from us. If you enjoyed listening, then listen to our next episode on the A&F Network. And in the meantime, if you want to see some of the work that we do, then you can pop along to our website, fasdireland.ie. On there, you'll find details of our support groups that begin in September in time for World FASD. Oh, what's it? Oh, my days. That's
Oh,
terrible.
wow.
That's really bad.
International
International
FASD Day.
Awareness.
Awareness Day. September 9th.
September 9th, yeah. And then the support groups are starting the week after. The parent one is nearly full, but we've still got quite a few spaces left on living for people living with FASD. So pop along to the website, have a look at that. And also, if you are an educator, an SNA, a SENCO, our next FASD in the classroom is the 7th of September, so just after the schools go back. These are free for anybody who works in a school, so you just have to pop in the details of your school within there so that we can double check that out. They have been funded by Digital Lift. This is the last one that will be funded by Digital Lift, but we will be continuing to do them free of charge in the future. But the next one is the 7th of September, so do pop along to fasdireland.ie, and if you are on social media, unlike our Rob,
Yeah.
then we are on all platforms, including a new one unofficially.
Yeah.
Just type in FASD Ireland and you'll find us there. So that's it, really.
Yeah.
All good. Speak to you guys next month.
See you now.
Bye.
Bye.